So it's Fantastic Friday. We're here for another Wellness WOWday, and I'm joined by the beautiful Yvonne. Good morning to you, young lady.
Oh, good morning, Liz. Thank you for that.
You're very welcome, as if we've just been talking about it. But we're here to talk about something more important than whether I call you young lady or not, and that is your Wellness WOWday. So, of course, if you are listening in, the Wellness Wow Day is the moment your life transforms because you put yourself first. That can take many forms, including you choosing not to carry something forwards. And Yvonne has a beautiful, amazing story that I think some of us will relate to probably stronger than others. So I'm just going to hand the mic straight over to you
Oh,
and I'll let
whoa.
you jump straight in.
Oh
Please take.
my. Well, you know, lately people have been telling me I should actually write a book about this. And being a book coach, I'm thinking, I don't know, maybe they're right, maybe they're not. This is a personal story, but it's also universal, I think, because there are so many other people out there who have experienced similar things. And when I was a child, my mother was not necessarily the nicest person. She was narcissistic, and I was her chosen target. There were five children in the family, although my two older sisters lived elsewhere, and I lived with my younger brother and sister. And it was pretty difficult. It was growing up in this little bubble that I lived in because I was afraid all the time. I was afraid to speak out. I was afraid that, I wanted to hide in the corner where she wouldn't see me, because if she didn't see me, then she couldn't attack me. Um, I did have a lot of responsibility because my mother ran a business. Now, I give her credit for this, because back in the early 60s, women didn't open businesses. It was very difficult to get a bank loan. She had to take my stepfather with her, and he had to co-sign because he was still working in a job.
Mhm.
But she had a business, and so she would go off to this little corner grocery store. Yes, it was 2 blocks away from our house. And I would be left with my brother and sister. So it was my job to take care of them. And then I would cook dinner, and I often had to do the laundry. And it sounds like Cinderella, doesn't it? But it was my life. And it was pretty much all that I knew. I escaped by going to school. So I'll tell you, I hardly ever missed a day of school, because school was my refuge. I had friends at school. The teachers liked me. I could be a different person. I could be free. And a lot of my friends used to say to me, you should run away. And I would look at them and say, where am I going to go? I was so scared to go anywhere outside of the house. I literally, up until my 40s, I was afraid to go anywhere outside of a small radius of my neighborhood. If people said, well, let's go here or let's go there, and I'd be like, I don't know where that is. I'll get lost. And yeah, so my mother spent most of my childhood and some of my adulthood literally making me feel less than, as much less than as she could. At one point, I remember when I was like 14, and I had gone to a friend's house. She didn't often let me go, but I went to this friend's house, and it was helping her mother unload the groceries and put them away. And the mother said to my mother the next day, wow, what a nice daughter you have. And my mother said to me that evening, so and so, I can't remember her name, so and so came and told me what a nice girl you are, but wow, she doesn't know you very well, does she? She doesn't know that you're not a very nice girl. I don't know why she would say such a thing. And I was just devastated. I just thought, how can that be? Because in my brain, I was trying to assimilate these two things: that I had helped this person, it was something good, but then that my mother was telling me it was something bad.
Mhm.
And so that is how I grew up, trying to figure out what was good, what was not good. I tell people all the time, later in my 30s, I think, when I came to understand that my mother had abused me,
Yeah.
I I said to myself, she taught me that this color, this crayon, is blue when it's really red. And I had to spend years trying to accept that it was red.
Mm.
And the fact that it was different and it was okay and that I was okay. So, I married. I grew up and married, and of course, I married a man just like my mother. Treated me the same way.
Mm-hmm.
I was clinically depressed, but I wasn't seeing anybody about it. I wasn't. I didn't see a psychologist. I didn't have any medicine. I went once. I'll tell you. Before I got married, I was in a very, very depressed state, and I did go to a psychologist. I made an appointment. And I said to him, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I said to the psychologist that I went to see that I was suicidal.
Mm.
And he looked at me and said, "Oh, get out of my office. You are so attractive and you have so much going for you in this life. What have you got to be suicidal about?" And I left his office thinking, what? I didn't know what to think. I just went home. I was stunned because this person was supposed to help me, and he didn't. And so that was just one more reason that I thought something was wrong with me.
Yeah.
It was all my fault. And so, I ended up going. If we go forward a little bit, I did finally take charge of my life and divorce the man who was just like my mother. And the kids and I had 3 kids at the time. We had a dog, we had a cat, and it was tough. It was hard. I got a job, but it barely covered the bills. The child support that my husband so reluctantly paid. At one point during the divorce, he said to me, "I'm going to make you so poor you can't afford a loaf of bread." And I kind of just smiled at him because I knew the New York State law. We're in New York State. It's 50-50. And he was going to pay child support regardless because he made a whole lot more money than I was ever going to make at a job. So it didn't scare me. It was just another indication of why the marriage failed. And the kids and I, we did okay. We did okay. I had a couple of good jobs, but I wanted to write. I grew up as a writer. That's what I did when I was in school all the time. I would write stories. My friends would say, "Write another story. We want to read another one. Write another story." And I was voted most likely to get published. And during my marriage, I did do some writing, and I got published in the local paper. I had a little column that I wrote, and it was about being a stay-at-home mom and how they don't get respect. And then I went back to school, and I felt like I was finally home. I was finally in the place I should be because I loved being around people who wrote, who were studying writing, journalism, creative writing, and things like that. It was the best time. And so, we go a little more forward, and I started working on my own. I decided being an employee was no good. It didn't work for me. People would hire me to write, and then they wouldn't let me write. They wanted me to be a secretary and bring them coffee. And I was like, "No, this is not what you said this was going to be." And I had a couple of really bad job experiences that we don't need to talk about. But when I decided to be my own boss and become an entrepreneur, Liz, it's one of those things where you're like, "I'm not going back there because that's toxic. I'm going to go here and do this." And you say, "How do you do that? Do you have any clue how to do that?" And it's like, "No, I have no clue. What do I do? What do I do?" Well, a friend of mine belonged to a business networking group. And so I joined. It was called Rochester Professional Consultants Network, RPCN. And I joined. That saved me. that saved me. They taught me everything I needed to know. Everyone there had already been mostly in business. We had meetings where we talked about what you need to do, how to make proposals, how to charge prices, how to meet people, all those kinds of things. And it was wonderful. And it was like my savior. And then I met my new husband, Tom, and I decided to write a book about marketing to women who shop online. This was 2004, I think. And I called the books, I wanted to pull people out of the Dick and Jane world of the 20th century. It was like, we're in the 21st century. Women control 80 to 85% of the shopping decisions, what people buy, including cars and other things in the home. So you should be marketing to them. You should be talking to them. And so I said, it's not the Dick and Jane world that I grew up in. It's not see Dick pull his wagon. Look, Jane, your brother Dick is playing with Spot the dog. It was a whole new program. So I said, a friend of mine that I was, at the time, it was before I met Tom, I was dating this marketer. And he said, I know what you can call it. You can call it dickless marketing. And so I did. So my book was called Dickless Marketing, Smart Marketing to Women Online. And it got, a lot of attention. I discovered, however, that the company I worked with, it was a print on demand. So this was early print on demand days. Nobody even knew. You would say print on demand and they'd say, what is that? I don't understand. And I hired a company that was supposedly reputable, and they did a lousy job. They didn't do the interior page design right. They didn't do the cover right. And so Tom had to redo the cover and the interior page design. And we published the book, and it got a lot of attention because of the title. And I started a blog called Lipsticking. Lipsticking is chapter 2 in the book. And basically this convinced me that I could do a better job helping authors write and publish books. So Tom and I did a lot of research, and we met with a business planner, and we put together a business plan to open our own publishing company. We discovered my book was being printed by a company 20 minutes from my house. So that was a no-brainer, right?
Yeah.
I've already got the printer and distributor right there. And we went to a bank with our proposal, and they gave us a loan. So we started a publishing company called Windsor Media Enterprises. WME Books is what we shortened it all to. And we published books for people for close to 9 years, because during that time, Liz, as I think I told you when we talked earlier, during that time, I met the interactive marketing director, which, it's a long title to me, of Nestle Purina. And I pitched him a blog because my blog, Lipsticking, was really successful. And I said to him, I follow women. I'm very big in the women's market. Women own more pets than men, and women want to connect with brands on a blog. And he said, well, we can't blog because the lawyers won't let us. So I said, well, I'll blog for you. He said, oh, okay. So I pitched him a blog, and he sponsored it, and I became the Purina blogger. Well, I can tell you, Liz, this took off. I didn't even realize how big the pet blogging market was, and it was huge. There was a community out there that I got to know as I wrote more in the blog, and I met one woman who was a PR professional, and she said, we should do something together. So we got together with her, my husband, my daughter, and I, and we created something called Blog Pause. Mm-hmm. And it was designed to help pet bloggers connect with brands, become better writers, become better photographers, learn how to run a business, learn how to ask for money because they were all afraid to ask for money. And we had a yearly conference that was pet friendly. Everybody brought their pets. It was international. People came from Australia and New Zealand and the UK. And it became so successful so fast, we had to close down the publishing company. We just couldn't do both. It was we were traveling all over for Blog Pause because we had to find specifically pet-friendly hotels.
Mm-hmm.
And we held the conference on alternate sides of the country. Mm-hmm. So people that wanted to drive, because if you flew, most of the time you couldn't bring your pet.
Yeah.
And we had 400 to 500 people at every conference. It was amazing. It was just fantastic. But it was acquired by another company, which was acquired by PetSmart. And PetSmart was a little bit less down to earth as we were with the pet bloggers. Yeah. And it wasn't something my husband and I were just not corporate people. And so we said, maybe this is time to retire from Blog Pause and go back to doing books. And so that's what we did. We retired from Blog Pause. We started up the company that I call Nurturing Big Ideas right now, but will this year be rebranded to Master Book Builders, because that's what we are and that's what we do. We help people write and publish books. Now, we don't publish them anymore like we did because Amazon does that.
Yep.
So that's how we do it. We work with them to get the book written. We get the cover design. We talk about their platform. We talk about their book launch. We do a book launch with them. They get the book out there. We tell them they have to market it after that. They can't just write a book, right? Oh, yeah. Isn't it wonderful? No, we have to market it. It's a lot of work. So we do that, but it all goes up on Amazon, and we make sure that it has the right description and the author has the right bio and the right picture and all of those things. And so we're back in the book business, and I'm happy. My mother is passed, and I have long since forgiven her for anything she did to me. I look back and I think, why did she be that? Why was she that way? Right? Maybe there was something I didn't know that made her that way. It's hard to say.
Well, as we started off saying, many people connect to that because you don't know her reasons. And it's, now we never, we end up as a position as adults where we've had something happen in the past and we cannot answer it, either because the person is either no longer with us or contactable for whatever reason, or they're just not telling the truth. What, whether they think they're protecting you or they're protecting themselves for whatever reason. Yeah. And they also, like the things you're saying to you, there may be something behind that which you don't know of. And this is obviously where a lot of the questions come in, because we can carry this trauma, and as you did. And obviously, without being rude, the first relationship was, there must have been a level of thinking, this is kind of what I'm used to. This is what I deserve, is because we tend to pick up the same patterns in relationships.
I will tell you, without going into it, that I picked mostly all the wrong men. And I'm sad to say that there were 2 of them were married men. And I cannot tell you how many married men would come up to me and want to take me out. And I did fall for two of them. And I look back now and think, what was I doing? But I honestly felt exactly what you said. I felt like, why I don't deserve anybody of my own. Yeah. So this is all I can have. And
when you said as well that she said that you're a nice person, but you're not, that she obviously doesn't know you. So, and then even going to the seeking help and then saying, people looked at face value and going, well, you should man up, and basically it's the old man up and get on with it. Why are you complaining?
Yeah. I mean, I that one really cut me, that when I saw that therapist, because I was really serious. And I did try 3 times. We don't need to get into that. But in the end, I I just kept going. And this is the thing, is that I look back now and I think, well, I could have turned to drugs and I didn't. I could have turned to alcohol and I didn't. One of the things I never wanted to happen was I wanted to be in control of my brain and my body, because there were so many men, because I was young and I was attractive, and they were like constantly after me, and I was afraid. I was really afraid if I drank too much or if I smoked pot. They wanted me to, back in the early days of people smoking pot and hiding from the law and stuff. And I'd be like, no, I'm not doing that. It's not. I don't know what will happen, and I don't want to find myself somewhere in someone's apartment, not knowing how I got there.
Yeah.
Right. And it was part of the whole, I'm afraid to do anything wrong because what will my mother say?
So even as an adult, you were still afraid of.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And as an adult, even when I left the house and had my own place, my mother tried to control me. And I remember one particular incident. I had gone on vacation. I actually had gone, I think, to Texas to visit my aunt. And I can't tell you very much about it because I don't remember. And I should remember because I was 22 years old. I wasn't a small child. I don't. I think that I was afraid the whole time I was there. I was afraid, like, why am I here? I shouldn't be here. I don't deserve to be on vacation. I don't know why. She wanted to take us out to dinner, my aunt, and I said, because my friend went with me. I said, no, you guys go. You guys go. I'm going to stay here. And it was because I was afraid. I was afraid of everything. But I'll tell you, when I got home, the next day, my mother called me, and she just went crazy. She said, you're home. When did you get home? Why didn't you call me the minute you got home? What are you doing? And I remember sitting there on the phone and thinking to myself, I don't have to check in with you every day. And I don't know what I said to her. But that was like my first time that I thought, I don't have to do what you tell me to do.
Yeah.
And it took a long, long time. And when I got to be, when my kids were grown and out of the house, my one daughter went to Colorado. And my husband, Tom, and I, she had a child, my granddaughter, Mia. And Mia, we would go out for Mia's dance recitals every summer. And when she was 7 or 8, we said, why are we doing this? We have an internet business. We'll just go live there. So we moved to Colorado. Well, this meant that I was no longer taking care of my mother. I was no longer there for her to call. She was married, and to someone she ended up getting an annulment from. But anyway, and she actually then remarried my dad. And that's a whole other story, because just recently I found out he wasn't my dad. But the point is, my sisters would call me and say, what is wrong with her? She's doing this or saying this or this is happening. And I'd say to them, that's how she is. That's the person she is, that I lived with for, 40, 50 years of my life. And here's what you do. And don't let her push your buttons.
Yeah. And that the thing with like narcissistic behaviors is there's a level of control, whether we portray it to ourselves or it's gone to others, whether it is a relationship, a partner, or it is a caregiver to someone else. And because that relationship, I mean, it could be, for example, as you said, your 2 older siblings were living elsewhere. It could have been you were the oldest, so you were considered the most capable. So actually, you need to get on with stuff.
Well, it turns out that I remember when my sisters left, because I was probably between 2 and 3. We were in a foster home, and they were very cruel to us there. They they used a cattle prod on us, and my older sister told my mother when she came to visit. So my mother said, well, she had to get us out of there. So she wrote a letter to my father. And the letter said, you need to come and get these 2 girls or I'm going to put them up for adoption. Not 3 girls, 2 girls. So he did. He came and he got my 2 older sisters and took them. And so I grew up with my mother, and I will tell you, she told me when I got out of foster care and went to live with her, she would tell me that she wished I'd never been born, that I should never have been born. And I mean, I would cry and cry. She never would comfort me. And I was scared to death all the time. I was scared. The biggest thing I was scared of then, I was scared she was going to leave and never come back. So what happens is, a few months ago, my oldest daughter was doing some DNA stuff on Ancestry.com. And she said, Mom, you should do it. I said, why? Why would I do it? What do I need to know? She says, you should do it because I don't think your dad is your dad. And I'm like, well, why do you think that? She said, because why would he come and get 2 girls? Why didn't he take all 3 of you when you were younger? Why did he leave you with grandma? And I thought, I don't know. I just thought he didn't want a little kid around. I just thought they were in school. And that was my expectation. So I did it. And it turns out she was right. Yeah. So I'm looking back now thinking my mother had an affair. And I was the product of that. And that's one of the reasons that she blamed me for the breakup of her marriage.
But let's close it with the actual WOWday moment, the change, because a lot of us have had some level of trauma, whether it's something someone said to us, whether it is broken relationships, whether it is a case of finding things out later in life that we thought were fact as young. You've obviously had a huge extent of this for a long period of time, and that's what makes this so incredible. The fact you've run such successful businesses and found a beautiful husband, an absolutely amazing relationship, and you're shining in life with your family and your girls and everything like this. So let's talk about the actual WOWday moment, because obviously it took strength to walk away from your first husband, the narcissist.
Well, here's why I did that. I did that because I said to one of my kids back then, I said, you never bring your friends over. I like having kids over. And they said, our friends are afraid of dad. And that was it. I said, I cannot do this to my children if this is how that's going to be. If this man is going to make them feel even a small part of what my mother used to make me feel. No, this is not happening in this house. So that's why I had the courage to do that. Plus, I do think that in some ways my mother did instill in me some strength and resilience, because I had to have that. I had to be strong for my brother and my sister. There was a time when my mother and my stepfather were having a big, angry, loud fight. And she hit him over the head with a lamp. And I thought he was dead. And I was watching from the upstairs. I was sitting on the stairs watching them. And I was scared to death because I thought, what's going to happen to my brother and sister? Yeah. At that time, I still believed the man who we discovered is not my father. I believed he was. So I thought, well, I'll go to Dad's, be there with my 2 older sisters, but they'll end up at my Aunt Mary's. Well, my Aunt Mary was not someone that could do anything with little children. She just wasn't the motherly type. And I sat there and I remember crying because I said, I have to go live with Aunt Mary because I can't leave them to do that. And so I did. So I had to have resilience, and it was often for other people, but it came out over time that it was for me also, because again, I could have failed at these suicide attempts and I didn't. And as I look back, I think, I did okay. I did okay under the circumstances. And after I left, after the divorce from my first husband, and when I became an entrepreneur, that was it. That was when I started understanding that this is me. This is who I can be. So I had a different name growing up. We're not going to go into that. But I stopped using that name when I went to college
Mm.
because I wanted people to know me as a different person. I didn't want to be her. I didn't want to be that person that grew up in that house. I wanted to be Yvonne, this person. And it was my middle name, so it's not like I picked it out of the sky or anything. And so that was another step forward to recognizing that I could be who I wanted to be. I didn't have to be who she thought I was.
Yeah.
And my kids helped me tremendously because they look up to me and tell me all the time how they're so proud of me, and I'm so proud of all of them. And my one daughter, as I said, she worked with us in Blog Pause. It's so funny story. So we're in Blog Pause. She's one of the executives. I'm the, what did they call me? The president, I guess. I don't know. But we were in an interview together, and the host said, "So Yvonne, how does it feel taking orders from your daughter?" And I remember laughing and saying, "I don't have any problem with that. You know, if she just does something I don't like, I send her to her room." So yeah, so life got better, and I credit Tom with a lot of that.
Yeah.
He stood by me. He was my strength. I mean, my mother was still alive then. He understood because he saw some of the incidents when she misbehaved, and he's been like my rock.
Yeah.
So
But
I
it's a journey. I was just going to say, you've just made this huge journey. Like you realizing things at 22,
Yeah.
coming home, going like standing up, like I don't have to check in with you.
Yeah.
Then of course, obviously getting the relationship, getting your kids, and I'm sorry I did cut you off just there, but this is all like it's been like step. Then all of a sudden, your children just went, and then you just went, I'm not putting what I've lived through to somebody else.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So it
Yeah.
made you realize probably how, I mean, to me, it sounds like it made you realize like, I'm strong enough to do this because they need me to do this.
Yes, exactly. And I know that my daughter who lives next door, so she's a PhD in epidemiology, no less. Um, she has said to me several times, and my son too, like, "Mom, how did you stay there? How did you not run away?" And I'm like, again, back then the girl I was would not run away. Even when I found out or I learned that my stepfather was not my father, I mean, that's a whole other story. I thought he was my father. And then my sister told me the man they lived with was my father. And now he's not my father. And so um, it just wasn't something. And again, how could I run away then? What would happen to my brother and sister? And I'm not going to paint too rosy a picture because I didn't like my sister. She was 9 years younger than me. She was the baby. My mother doted on her. So I will openly say I was very mean to her for her first like 10 or 15 years of her, 12 years of her life. But then she started getting the same treatment when I left. And so she ran away to my sister's house. And I went to my mother, who was furious. How dare this girl do this? And I went to her and said, you need to let her stay there. Jan, my older sister, says she can live there. You need to let that happen. Well, I'm not going to do that. She said, why should she stay there? And I said, well, because Dad, my stepfather at that time, was sick. I said, Dad's sick. He needs you. You got to take care of him. You can't deal with this teenager who's going to cause all these problems. Let her stay there and everything will be fine. And you can take care of Dad. And she's like, well, yeah, I guess that makes sense. So my sister got to stay with my older sister and avoided a lot of the things that happened to me. And my poor brother, I will tell you, he admitted to me numerous times that as an adult, he went into therapy because he felt guilty that he couldn't help me.
And I think because obviously there's so much in your story which I think can be pulled out for people could connect to maybe one part, different parts. But obviously let's just take some closing thoughts because obviously about mental well-being, because the big thing here is obviously the mental and emotional side, because although
Yes.
things can be said to you, it was then, like you said, how can I believe a blue's red? And, you know, the
Mhm.
different things, because you got a thought pattern pushed onto you, which
Mhm.
was someone's idea, perception, thoughts, whatever reason. And then you started believing that as fact.
Yes.
And then, of course, when you went to get help, people, you were like going, but this is what my this is my belief, because
Mhm.
it really was your belief.
Right.
But people just went, look at you, that's not your belief, that's wrong. And
Yeah.
this is why we need to talk about this for a second, is because the mental well-being, people don't always, they always take a facial or superficial look at things.
Mhm. Mhm. Absolutely. And I think I rebelled against that because, of course, my mother taught me I was less than anything. I was nothing. So even though people would tell me how attractive I was, and oh, you're so beautiful and everything, and I would be like, I really, my brain was like, you, what is that? What are they talking about? They cannot be talking about you. So it was hard for me to assimilate that. But I'll tell you that I think some resilience in me, not just for my brother and sister, because I thought it wasn't like, I don't want to make it sound like, oh, I was this great, wonderful person because I wanted to help take care of them. It was just part of what I believed. I didn't want them to suffer the way I did. But I think also that because I wanted to be a writer,
Yeah.
that's what saved me.
Yeah.
I would write. I wrote my first novel in 7th grade. So whenever these things happened, again, I wrote stories in school, and they were all about abused children. I understand exactly why abused children don't leave or want to go back. I understand that 100%. But the writing helped me get it out.
Yeah.
So even if someone doesn't want to be a writer, they can have a journal.
Yeah.
It's so freeing to get your thoughts and things out on paper, and to, whether it goes anywhere other than just you under your pillow or wherever you put it, it's something that is yours and yours alone.
And that's probably in some ways what saved you more, because not only did you become a writer, so you've followed a passion and enjoyment, but it's something that you've always found pleasure in some way. It was your way to escape, and it was your, say, your happy space.
Mm-hmm.
Your, like you said, what school was, but school's only a certain period of our lives. You've always been able to write. So do you
Yes.
think that's also what's impacted your success, because you've actually followed that passion and brought it into your business?
I think it has. I think what I discovered when I wrote that first book was that, again, I was treated poorly. They did such a bad job, and I don't want other people to have that happen to them. So that's my outgoing wanting to make sure other people don't have to go through the things. So in this case, be taken to advantage of as a writer. If they're writing a book, I want their book to be wonderful for them. I want their book to be exactly what they hope for, and it's a part of me as
Mm.
I don't know where it came from. I really don't, because I just always did it. I did it in 2nd grade. I almost flunked 2nd grade. The teacher was called my mother in and said she's not doing her work, and we're gonna hold her back if she doesn't do her work. She just sits there and writes pictures and draws pictures and writes stories. And my mother said, well, that's not a bad thing. To my mother's credit, that's not a bad thing. But okay, I'll talk to her. And I did pass 2nd grade. But I mean, all the way back to then, that was my outlet.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, then this ties in with Blog Pause. I love animals. And I begged for a dog, and I didn't get one till I was 12. But I mean, when I got a dog, that dog went everywhere with me. All my friends knew that if I was coming to their house, the dog was coming too. So if the parents wouldn't let me in the house with the dog, then we sat out on the porch,
Yeah.
because that dog was with me everywhere I went. And I think that was another thing that helped me cope, because I had this animal that gave me unconditional love.
Yeah. 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 Well, that's amazing. Obviously, we can keep going on for
Sure.
more, but let's just close with that, because that's fantastic. Your story is amazing, and I'm hopefully, in fact, I know other people will connect because they've had other people tell them things, push things on them, and
Yeah.
carry it through, and all sorts of different things. And of course, I do recommend, if anyone hasn't connected with Yvonne or checked out her work, I recommend you do so. If you are looking to write a book or obviously follow that journey at some point, whether now or in the future, I will, all her links are in the comments below. But any issues, obviously drop a comment and I will make sure that you two can get in touch. And of course, you will have the best coach ever for that book, because you've got somebody who knows the trials and tribulations of writing, the struggles it takes from taking personal space into business, and also following your passion to make your passion come alive. So hopefully I've summed up in the best possible way, because Yvonne, you are an amazing lady.
Well,
You're
thank you, Liz.
an incredible journey.
Thank
I
you.
feel it a blessing to have met you, to have spoken to you, and I'm welling up because obviously we've had a few powerful conversations, and I really hope to have a few more in the future.
Excellent. Excellent. I loved it. Thank you so much for having me.
It is an absolute pleasure. So as always, let's close it out.